Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leisrealtalk. All right, happy Thursday, happy Friday. For those of us in the US, we have a long weekend ahead of us, Memorial Day. Okay, but it's extremely cold here. It should be the beginning of summer, but it feels like winter. All right, I haven't talked about China's economy for a while, partly because it's gotten so bad that it's difficult to quantify the scope of the crisis. But at the same time, it's clear that the Chinese economy is collapsing. We're seeing a flood of videos on social media showing the total breakdown of business activities, aside from other things. These videos show homeless populations growing, workers not getting paid, banks seizing up, and massive number of businesses shutting down. More than a few fans have asked me, are those videos real? Well, my answer is yes, they are real. And now, with Trump's tariff war, the problems are only intensifying and the economy unraveling at a faster pace. So, tonight, let's talk about just how bad China's economy really is and whether there's any chance it can survive Trump's renewed tariff war. My answer is a clear no, but I'll back it up with hard numbers. This analysis draws from the work of a brilliant Chinese analyst who used the CCP's own official data to show that China's financial and investment engines have completely stalled. Exports are collapsing, credit is drying up, and a banking crisis loom. I'll break it down through analyzing April's export and loan data. So, no rumors tonight. Just hard evidence and real data and spreadsheets. Okay, first things first, China's export in April. You might have already heard that last month. China's total exports grew 8% year over year when compared with April last year. And that's according to China's official customs data. It reached 315 billion US dollars, an 8% uptick compared to last April's $292 billion. So this 8% jump sent waves of excitement through Chinese media. And some Chinese saw this as proof of China's economic resilience and declared that the American trade blockade is a failure. That's obviously not the case. So how do I back up with my numbers? Well, first of all, Chinese customs data is compiled based on whatever is written on the customs declaration forms. It doesn't care whether those goods were ever received by the importers or counted as real export revenue. So if you loaded a ship with goods and declare them export on the custom forms, the goods don't necessarily reach a destination or are settled in trade. So let's look at the customs numbers anyway. Let's break it down by region. So here are the numbers. So this is according to China's customs data, and what you see is, first of all, the exports to US it decreased by 21%. It was down from almost $42 billion in April 2024 to now the $33 billion this April. Now, keep in mind, some of these goods were shipped in March and cleared customs in April. So this 21% drop is likely understated due to the timing lag. By May, this drop will likely be even worse. But the drop in exports to the US is picked up by the increase in imports to Southeast Asia and Latin America. This is what Chinese exporters have been doing since Trade War 1.0. In 2024, it's estimated that half of the exports to Southeast Asia and Latin America are transshipments with the ultimate destination of the United States. So if you look at the data in April, exports to Southeast Asian countries is up 21%. And then exports to Latin America is up 18%. So think about it. The Southeast Asian countries and the Latin American countries don't have the purchasing power to absorb that kind of increase. These spikes aren't about real demand. They are about transshipment. So desperate Chinese exporters are loading up cargo ships and sending goods to Asian countries and Latin America, hoping to reroute them to the US. So in April, let me show you this. So I want to show you that in April of last year, if you look at this column, total exports to Southeast Asia and Latin America added up to $71.1 billion, right? So if half of that was destined for the US, and that's around $35.5 billion. And then in April 2025, that number jumped by another $14.2 billion. So now we're looking at nearly $50 billion worth of Chinese goods in April, likely being disguised and rerouted to the US through Southeast Asia and Latin America. So that's my that's the square at the bottom. I mean, it's what, 49.8. Yeah, it's almost 50 billion. 49.8. So it's basically half of the 71.1 from 2024, and then plus the incremental 14 billion. So that $50 million is intended for the US. Now, in April, the US Customs and Border Protection rolled out a new origin verification system. So goods coming from Asian and Latin America now face extra scrutiny, especially those suspected of Chinese origin. So to pass inspection, exporters must now submit complete energy consumption records, detailed raw material sourcing documents, and the original purchase invoices, and other things. So, and also the penalties are high. Civil penalties can be up to 4 times the duty, the tariffs. And then criminal penalties are up to 2 years in prison. If it's smuggling activities, the prison terms can be up to 20 years. So even if the Chinese exporters were reckless, trying to reroute these goods, that doesn't mean that U.S. importers want to risk, fines or jail terms to help Chinese firms cheat. So that $50 billion in rerouted goods may not get through the customs of destination countries and may not be booked as revenue. If they already made it onto ships, it's likely headed for the ocean and floating somewhere, and some of it may end up dumped into the ocean because if nobody accepts them. So that even though there's an uptick, my point is, even though there's an uptick, that doesn't mean that. I mean, it's the exports were recorded in on the declaration form from the customs, from China's customs, but it's not necessarily going to be recorded as export revenue. So that's why from April to early May, major U.S. ports have gone quiet. Cargo volume at the port of Los Angeles, America's biggest West Coast port, has fallen by 35%. Because if transshipment were actually working, sure, Chinese ships should increase, right? But the Southeast Asian and Latin American ships would flood in, right? So if that works, the Chinese ships would decrease, but you will see more ships coming from Southeast Asia and Latin America. And port traffic should remain stable. The fact that total traffic dropped sharply proves that the transshipment didn't get through. So what's the final conclusion? The 8% export growth, quote unquote growth, that China reported for April is just a mirage based on a pile of fake numbers, covering up a harsh reality, and the numbers for May may look even worse. All right, so that's some numbers on China's exports, but I think what's more interesting is China's financial meltdown. And let's talk about the most alarming figure, China's loans to small and micro enterprises. So what is small and micro enterprises? They're called SMEs. Don't be fooled by the names. They refer to businesses that have either 1 to 100 employees or revenues up to 800 million yuan. And they're not small companies. They make up over 90% of all businesses in China, contribute to over 60% of GDP and tax revenue, and provide more than 80% of urban jobs. They're vital to China's economy, but they're also the most vulnerable during downturns or policy shifts. So according to Chinese media outlets, at the end of March, the outstanding loan balance of SME stood at, I have a slide to show you. Here we go. So yeah, end of March, total outstanding loan balance was 35.3 trillion yuan. By the end of April, the number dropped to 34.3 trillion. That's a 1 trillion yuan drop in just 1 month. Now, the analyst said that this kind of plunge is unprecedented. It simply hasn't happened before. 1 trillion, not 1 billion, 1 trillion yuan decline in outstanding loans for the SMEs in a single month means that there were no new loans being issued to SMEs, only aggressive repayment. And let's be clear, in the ongoing economic downturn, this wasn't because businesses suddenly decided to pay down their debts out of goodwill. The only logical explanation is this. Under the pressure of the US-China tariff standoff, Chinese commercial banks collectively pulled the plug on lending to private, small or export-oriented businesses. Not only did they stop lending, they also turned around and demanded immediate repayment from these companies. That's the only explanation for this extreme abnormal plunge in lending to small private firms. The numbers show another problem, which is that China's financial governance is dysfunctional. So let me explain that. Supporting small private enterprises has been the central government's official position. It's a main talking point of the People's Bank of China. But after the tariff war flared up, that policy has been thrown out the window. China's banking system is fundamentally distorted. The central bank and the large state-owned commercial banks don't see eye to eye. The PBOC, People's Bank of China, or the central bank, may appear to be a ministerial-level agency directly under the State Council, but politically, it ranks far lower and is powerless. This is because the people running the central bank are mostly foreign-trained technocrats from humble backgrounds with no political clout, no red CCP privilege behind them. On the other hand, China's big commercial banks are very powerful. They're controlled almost exclusively by the elite red families, backed by powerful patrons. So these individuals hold real political weight. When the central bank issues policy directives, the big banks often ignore them entirely. To them, central bank orders are just scraps of paper. Most recently, in May 2025, the National Financial Regulatory Administration, along with 7 other agencies, issued a new set of guidelines titled Measures to Support Financing for Small and Micro Enterprises. These measures aim to boost credit availability, lower financing costs, and improve efficiency. However, the big banks operate by their own logic. They focused solely on managing risk and not on implementing national policy. I mean, it's normal in a market economy, right? The banks, financial banks, they have to, answer to their shareholders, but not to a central government, not to central government agencies, although they need to be compliant. But let's put it this way: the PBOC, China's central bank and China's commercial banks do not work in sync. The central bank, with its low political status, has no authority over the major banks, not even minimum influence. So from the central bank's perspective, forcing private exporters to repay loans during a tariff war is economic suicide. It is digging your own grave. But for the commercial banks, this is the only rational choice to stay in business. It's how they protect themselves from bad loans. And clearly, the banks won this round. Now, let's connect that to the broader credit picture for the first few months of this year. It's shocking. I'm looking directly at the official chart of total financing flows released by the central bank. I retyped everything for you because this is what it looked like originally, and it's hard to read. So I translated everything. Now, here's what we see. So let's take a look at the green shaded columns, right? The first column is the year, or the month, sorry, January. It's chronologically by month. And then the second column in green, shaded in green, it shows the incremental financing activities by month. So January, over 7 trillion yuan in new credit. February, it dropped to just over 2 trillion. Well, this is due to the Lunar New Year break. I mean, every year during the Lunar New Year, the whole country shuts down for about 7 days, 7 to 2 weeks. So yeah, commercial activities are usually low. Then March, it rebounded to about 5 trillion. Then came April, it crashed to just a little over 1 trillion yuan. That kind of month-over-month drop is so steep that it defies conventional logic. Now let's drill down into April's components by looking across to the right, across the cream-colored columns, because those are the breakdown. You see, the new renminbi loans came in at only 88.4 billion yuan, a fraction of what we saw earlier in the year, right? The renminbi loan, yeah, it's a fraction of what we saw in January and February. And the rest of the data is equally grim. Oh, okay, maybe, no, I think it's too small. You know what? Let me make this bigger. Yeah, it's too small. Yeah, this is better. So the first column in the cream-colored section, it's renminbi loans. You see how April was 88 billion? That's, I mean, it's a fraction of what it was in January and March. I mean, February was a special month because of the Lunar New Year holiday. And then the rest of the data is equally grim. Foreign currency loans, negative. Entrusted loans and trust loans, negative. Bankers' acceptance, negative. This shows just how violently commercial activities in China have contracted in April, right? April was extremely bad. Now, the only sector that didn't shrink as much was corporate bond issuance, which saw 234 billion yuan in April. That's mostly due to local government financing platforms issuing municipal bonds. It's what you call LGFVs. So again, it's government government financing. And then there's government bond categories. It's central and local governments together borrowed 973 billion yuan. Everything else too small to matter. So what this tells us is brutally simple. By April, China's financial activities had basically come to a halt. Commercial banks were aggressively calling in loans from private businesses. The only entity still able to borrow money from the financial system was the government. Now, let's take a quick look at the first quarter loan data before April's collapse. This will help us understand how inactive China's private sector has become. In January, so if you add up the total new loans for the first 3 months, you have a total amount of new loans issued in the first quarter at 9.7 trillion yuan. So here's the real question. Out of that 9.7 trillion, how much actually went to private enterprises? That's the figure that can truly reflect the momentum of China's economy. Now, private sector lending data isn't something the central bank releases regularly. It's usually impossible to find, but in an unusually revealing moment during the central bank's press conference at the end of April, they gave us the number. It's 2.4 trillion in new loans, and that went to private firms in first quarter. And also by the end of March, total outstanding loans to private companies stood at 45 trillion. So let's do the math. Private firms receiving 2.4 trillion loans out of 9.7 total new loans in the first quarter. That's 24.7%. In other words, China's private sector received barely a quarter of total new loans in the first 3 months this year. 3 quarters went to the government. And also, by the end of March, by the end of Q1, total outstanding business loans in China were 180 trillion yuan. Of that, private companies held 45 trillion. That's 25%. The two numbers line up perfectly. It confirms that private enterprises only make up about 1/4 of China's lending landscape. Now, let's add April's trade war escalation into the picture. What do we see? The entire financial system abandoned private companies, cutting off credit, aggressively demanding repayments, and driving them toward collapse, all out of fear of the risk of defaults. And this is the real operating logic of China's banking system. Now, here's what we must remember. Let me come back. China's private sector contributes to 50% of China's tax revenue, 60% of GDP, 70% of technological innovations, and 80% of employments. But they only accounted for 25% of lending activities in April. it's more efficient with the private sector is more efficient with investments, with creating jobs, and it's more efficient in earning foreign exchange and driving consumption. And yet, in the very first few months of this year, China's entire financial system turned its back on them, cutting off funding, demanding repayments, and leaving them to bleed. Let's take a look at one last set of numbers. That is the investment return on debt. How much fixed asset investment is driven by each additional yuan of debt? So this is a very, let me make this bigger so you guys can see it. Yeah, it took me a while to compile these numbers. But this is a trend analysis. It's the investment return on debt, right? So you have total financing amount for the year, total new financing for the year, and then total fixed asset investment. And if you look at the ratio, in 2015, the figure peaked at 3.6. I highlighted in green, meaning that every yuan of new debt could drive 3.6 yuan of investment. That means for every yuan of new debt, China could create 3.6, or China created 3.6 yuan worth of real investment. So debt fueled real economic growth. But since then, the return has plunged. And as of April 2025, the number is down to just to be under 1. It's 0.9. That means every yuan of new debt now generates less than 1 yuan of real investment. The rest isn't productive. It goes to pay for interest and roll over old debt. It signals some serious problems. Instead of funding new projects, new debt is being used to roll over old debt. And this is a debt spiral. And also there's a declining efficiency, right? The economy needs more and more debt just to achieve less and less output. And also, most alarmingly, debts are now non-repayable, because when the return on debt falls below 1, the system is consuming more than it produces. It means you can't pay back the principal, let alone the interest. Eventually, defaults, bad loans, or financial crisis become inevitable. So this metric shows that China's debt-fueled growth model has broken, or is breaking down. Debt is no longer translating into real growth. It's just plugging financial holes. Because debt is now outpacing productive investment. It's no longer repayable. And that paints a devastating picture, with banks abandoning private businesses and the government as the only borrower left. China's financial and investment engines have lost all momentum. The system is essentially running on fumes. And the entire setup is now very fragile. People say it's a single spark away from breakdown. And it can lead to a liquidity crisis. And the reason is very simple. When exports decline and when private sector was cut off, the entire economic machine stops. So now this is only based on April's data. I think when May comes, things will look worse. Things will look much worse. And because the weight of the tariff war will be more severely felt. So hopefully these numbers present a story, give you some realistic view or insight into China's economy. It's hard to do it without numbers, but I think this is at least one attempt to show you where China's economy stands at this point. All right, let's see. That's all. Let's see what people have for me. It's a lot of numbers. I have a saying, once a financial analyst, always a financial analyst. Yeah. But I understand numbers are not for everyone. All right. No questions, no comments. Manny Kyla. Why China has neglected its domestic market? We can't say it has neglected its system, its entire political economic system. This is the results of a totalitarian regime. When the government tries to control everything, when it has not entirely embraced the market economy, it's just like what Premier Wen Jiabao said. When you do not have meaningful political reforms, economic reforms are meaningless, are going to break down. Because yes, China has a central bank, but it doesn't do anything. China has a stock market with several exchanges, but they're more like, gambling, the worse than casinos. So on the surface, someone said that China is like a Hollywood set. From the outside, it looks like it has the features and establishments of a market economy, but it doesn't do what they're supposed to do because the political system is still government controlled. The economy is still a state economy. So it doesn't work. It's just like that example where that shows the relationship between commercial banks and the central bank. It's just twisted. Everything is twisted because the foundation is a state economy, right? The central government tries to control everything. The central government tries to control the local government. It tries to control everything. So, yeah. So it's not like the government or the officials have neglected its domestic market. It cannot have a domestic market because you need to give people freedom and let people choose. You need to give people a certain amount of freedom to have that domestic market so that it can thrive. But if you don't want to give people the freedom, you kill the market. So there's no domestic market. It contradicts with its political ideology, right? Okay. All right. All right. Super stickers. Richard Hauser. Good job. Keep going. Okay. All right. I know you guys get tired of talking about rumors or rumor-inspired contents. So I challenge myself trying to quantify, because it's very difficult to talk about China's economy. There has to be a way to quantify the problems. So I'm glad that I did it. Hopefully it's helpful. Someone asked me, is it true that when USA leaving any country, China get in? I don't think so. First of all, the USA is not leaving, and China doesn't have the capacity. China has all sorts of problems of itself, so I don't know if it has the capacity to get anywhere. So that's my view. A question from Kevin Job. Have you ever given thought to what you consider the most ideal government system you'd ideally love to see there? What is your most ideal scenario, how you'd wish China government would be? I have been thinking about that, and I haven't formed an opinion yet. because I don't think I mean, I'm just trying to be honest. I'm not offending my American friends here. I see flaws in the American democratic system. I do not believe that laws are now becoming restrictive. It has, our lawmakers are passing so many laws that are wasting, you know, they just pass laws that are so restrictive, and it's going to be counterproductive. And so I'm still thinking. It's a good question. I don't have the answer yet. If I do, I think I'll solve half of the world's problem, because a lot of the problems that we have now are related to precisely the governance model that we have. But on the other hand, some people argue it's not the problem is not with the model. The problem is with people's heart. People have become selfish, and very self-centered, and ideologically driven. So that when that happens, no governance model will work. So the problem is not which model we use. It's how do you put trust back into any governance model? When there's no trust, no model will work. So, all right. Drusilla Schultz, thank you. All right. Let's see. Oh, another one. Thank you. Toby Katva. Lei looks lovely tonight with her hair down and cute earring. Oh yeah, I haven't worn this pair of earring for a long time. Thank you. Thank you for noticing that. All right. I want to thank Richard Hingman. Thank you for the super sticker. Oh, here's another one. T. Torrance. Good work deciphering the CCP puzzle. Thank you, Van Cat. Oh, thank you, Lei. Isn't 1 month data too early to conclude? With top global companies like CATL, BYD, and solar companies leading from front, etc., is the Chinese economy so bad? I don't think BYD and CATL are doing that well due to the geopolitical climate in the world. And also there's a severe overcapacity. These companies are built to serve like to Earth. But so BYD is losing money, right? I did a couple of programs comparing BYD to Tesla, and BYD's profitability is worrisome. And CATL is also losing money. So is it, well, 1 month data, of course, is not sufficient to make any prediction. But then because April is so unique, because April was the first month during the tariff war, but the numbers already show, right? I think this whole analysis is trying to show you that we're so early in the tariff war, but China's financial data already shows the dramatic decline, and that's scary. So that's the point. All right. And another YouTube channel, thank you, Texas Growing. How does the CCP view Israelis? Do you condemn the violence in Gaza? Well, China shifted their view just recently, right? China's ambassador to Israel publicly condemned Hamas recently, and that's a dramatic shift ever since the conflict happened, since last October. Was it last October? It feels like more than it was a year ago. So I'm sorry, not last October, the October in 2023. So China shifted their view, and also today Xi Jinping shifted his position on the Russia-Ukraine war, when he talked to Emmanuel Macron, China agreed to a full ceasefire, or a temporary ceasefire, like a 30-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. And we have not heard that ever since the war broke out in 2022. So China is quickly making changes in its diplomatic maneuvers. And I wonder if it has to do with the fact that Xi Jinping has lost power. In my position, I condemn all violence, regardless what it is. That's my position. When you say banks are not loaning money to small business, but the small business here, I mean, it's just a term. China's SMEs are really the backbone of the country's economy. Like I said, they're 90% of the businesses. They contribute to 60% of the GDP, provide 80% of the jobs. So is this to return to Mao, or there's just no money to lend? It's both. It's both. All right. Okay. All right. So, there's one question from James Honey. Could you safely travel and leave China? Would they imprison you? I cannot go to China. No. I'm not risking anything. I don't even try. Yeah. Scott D. Well, thank you, Scott. All right. Okay, here we go. Here's the question from Jaden Cash, forwarded by Chris. Why does the world believe China is rising, but the data tell us otherwise? Well, it's because two reasons. I mean, that's two reasons I can think of now. One is the mainstream media has been heavily infiltrated by the CCP. They are take a look at New York Times, for example. I mean, it's like sounds like People's Daily. It sounds like People's Daily. So mainstream media or our left-leaning media outlets, whether they are aware or not aware, they somehow help spread CCP's narratives. That's one. And the second reason is the CCP has spent a lot of money on social media to push their narratives. They have spent so much money, bringing influencers, social media influencers to China. Invite them to China for an all expense paid visit. Even I got email. I got email for an invitation to China. And a lot of people, fall for that. So you can't, that's what I used to be in public relations business. I do not like that business at all, because that business, publicity is all about shifting narratives according to people's need. And that's, you're covering up scandals and you're trying to turn a negative publicity to appear positive. So we have too many professionals, making, in that trade. So it's very difficult to get truth out, particularly concerning China. All right. That's all. That's all for tonight. I reached the bottom of the questions, and I think, here's Carl Dilborn. You really need to turn your application into a Fox News broadcast. You would make a great news anchor on a primetime news broadcast. You know what? I enjoy my independence. I enjoy this casual setting and this free exchange between me and my viewers, and don't have a boss. I work for myself, and I really enjoy that. Yeah, I can't imagine myself working for uh, other people at this moment. Maybe that will change in the future, but at least for now, I enjoy my independence. All right, thank you very much. I will. Someone asked me about Harvard losing students' visa status because of CCP involvement. Harvard University is very, very pro CCP. I have a friend who attended Harvard's Kennedy School a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. This is a while back. And he told me, he said, the Kennedy School is basically like CCP's party school. That's his original words. He said that the Kennedy School feels like the CCP's party school, and I was shocked to hear him saying that. But that's the description. That's how he described Harvard Kennedy School back then. Now I think it's even worse. So, all right. Well, I thank you. Oh, here two more. Kent Birdall Lay, nice Pooh Bear doll. All right, right there. There he is. Thank you. And Brother Ted, at some point, she will be put of power. If you were to bet, would it be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or what? Well, we already heard that the fourth plenum is scheduled for this summer around August. His power would definitely, his position would definitely change. Now people are discussing whether he will completely fade out or completely step down, which is hard to believe. It's not likely. Or he will partially step down. Like he will keep one of the 3 positions he currently holds. Maybe just hold the president of China. That's a ceremonial title. It doesn't hold much weight. So his power has already waned significantly. But will he completely be gone in 3 months? It's hard to say. I doubt it. Unless there's one condition that he may be completely out, his health. And that's not something that we know in advance. All right. That's all. Thank you very much. And I will see you next time. Well, actually, that's this weekend. Bye.